We want it. We need it. Must have the precious. They stole it from us. Sneaky little hobbitses. Wicked, tricksy, false. No, not Master. Yes, precious, false. Master's my friend. You don't have any friends. Nobody likes you. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. You're a liar and a thief. Murderer. Go away. Go away. I hate you. I hate you. Where would you be without me? Gollum. Gollum. I'd saved us. It was me. We survived because of me. Not anymore. What did you say? Master looks after us. We don't need you anymore. What? Leave now and never come back. Leave now and never come back. Fuck! Leave now and never come back. We told him to go away, and away he goes, precious. Gone, gone, gone. Smeagol is free.
If something has happened to Boromir, we would have you tell us.
His horn washed up upon the riverbank. About 6 days passed. It was cloven in two. But more than this, I know it in my heart. It was my brother.
These tears you cry have come too late. Take back the lies, the hurt, the blame, and you will weep when you face the end alone. You are
Hello, Middle-earth fans, and welcome to my latest Middle-earth review, where today I review The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, directed by Peter Jackson and released in 2002, although my review is based on the extended edition, not the theatrical cut. I have seen the theatrical versions, but I have the extended cuts. I think, first of all, an apology is in order. I'm so sorry for not getting to this review a lot sooner. I know my previous review was about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Things happened and sort of slipped my mind a bit, so I apologise. If you'll just excuse me for 1 second. Oh, doing the Gollum impression really takes it out my voice. So, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, the second film in the Oscar-winning movie trilogy. So, what's The Two Towers plot? Let's find out, shall we? Basically, the story of The Two Towers is that it continues directly after Fellowship of the Ring. The story has now been kind of divided essentially into 3 narrative strands. We are following Frodo and Sam, who encounter Gollum, who they ask to lead them to Mordor, and he does so. But it turns out Gollum has some ulterior motives, so to speak, and they sort of question his loyalties, shall we say. And then we have Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, who are trying to rescue Merry and Pippin, and then they get involved in going to help King Theoden, who is the king of this little town called Rohan, but his mind has been poisoned by Saruman, so they need to go and help him, and then they need to prepare the people of that village for a massive battle at Helm's Deep, with 10,000 Uruk-hai, so yeah, bigger stakes this time. And then, of course, Merry and Pippin, who are, for the most part, inside Fangorn Forest for this movie, where they meet Treebeard, who is a giant walking tree, although they call them the Ents. Treebeard is reluctant to get involved in the war that's going on, but Merry is determined to get him to do something about it. Treebeard realizes because Saruman has killed a lot of his people for industrialism, they decide to fight back against the forces of Isengard. Also, we run into Boromir's brother, known as Faramir. And basically, yeah, he encounters Frodo and Sam, and he wants to take the ring back to Gondor, to his father, because he wants to earn his father's respect. And his father has asked for the ring to come to Gondor. Originally, that was Boromir's mission, but Boromir died in the previous film. So Faramir has to make a choice as to whether he chooses to let Frodo, Sam, and Gollum go, or whether he hands the ring over to Gondor. The Two Towers, well, what can I say other than, wow, this is a magnificent movie. Once again, Peter Jackson knocks it out of the park. I don't know how he did it, but man, this movie is impressive, to say the least. First of all, what I love about The Two Towers is that it actually does what a sequel should do. It continues the narrative, for one thing, but it builds upon what was set before. The Fellowship of the Ring spent a long time introducing us to the world of Middle-earth and to the story, and there was a lot to set up. This movie doesn't need to do that. Originally, the studio wanted Peter Jackson to do a recap prologue of the first film, like a condensed version, and they thought, well, why do we want to tell the first film again? Get the audience to go and watch the first film. Peter Jackson wanted to start the film with the Balrog fight, and my goodness me, that was a great decision. This movie is just 10 times more epic, in my opinion, than Fellowship. Fellowship I love the Fellowship of the Ring, but The Two Towers, for me, kicks it up a gear. It builds upon what the first one did so well, and I like the fact that it's taking on bigger themes and bigger outlets for the story. For one thing, the whole commentary on the environmental plot versus industrialism. I love that. The fact that, we have the Ents and Isengard basically going head to head here. They finally decide to stand up to Saruman, who's been chopping the trees down and killing all of nature to help build Sauron his army. And of course it all backfires. And it is a great storyline. It really is, and yeah, Treebit is fantastic. I also love the the story with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And when we get to Helm's Deep, my goodness me, that is an incredible battle. It is one of the best battles ever put on film. It is so good. Let's just, while we're on the subject of the action, let's talk about the action. The battle for Helm's Deep, like I've said, is just incredible. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It is incredible. It's all practically done. Very little CGI. There is CGI when and where needed. But the stakes are at an all-time high because every so often they'll cut back to the women and the children in the caves. And that's the emotional reason why they're fighting. They're fighting to save the women and children. And they could not have done it better. Jackson directs this movie beautifully. It is a beautifully directed film. It all comes together so well. I also like the fight with the wargs, all the wolves of Isengard, as they call them. On their way to Helm's Deep, they encounter them and they have a bit of a small fight there, which is quite fun. And then, of course, the climax when it all comes together with the Ents, when they flood Isengard. That is pretty spectacular, to say the least. And on a visual level, this movie is impressive. I mean, it is aged so well. This was released in 2002, and the CGI looks better than most films. I'm not even joking. Shots look just incredible. Every frame has been handcrafted so beautifully, just as good as Fellowship of the Ring. For me, what takes this film slightly above the Fellowship of the Ring is the fact that it does raise the stakes. This is the beginning of the War of the Ring, which we will see in The Return of the King. But I really like the emphasis on, something is coming and it's not very good. And we get to see another culture of Middle-earth. We get to see the Rohirrim. And King Theoden, yes, King Theoden played by Bernard Hill. He's a very good character. I think he's quite depressed, to be honest. Obviously, he's lost his son. His son has died and he's outlived his child, which is very sad. But he just doesn't believe that there's any hope, and he's kind of succumbed to grief. And in a way, the character of Denethor almost mirrors this in Return of the King, but we'll get to him later. Although Denethor does have a scene in the extended edition of this film, which is really nice, and I'm glad they put it back in. I'm surprised they cut it, obviously due to runtime. Theoden, I really like the guy. I mean, you do kind of feel sorry for him. Yeah, he's lost his son, and he doesn't have a lot of hope for this situation, and he feels like the rest of the world have let him down, like no one cares about Rohan, which is a real shame, because Rohan is plagued by essentially terrorism. Like, it's being constantly attacked and burnt. There's a moment at the beginning of the film where there's a young boy and his sister who are being sent away to Edoras to raise the alarm and to raise awareness to the king that the orcs are coming. We need to get out of here. We need to evacuate. And that was beautiful. That was nice. Again, cutting back to the whole reason why they need to do this is that we don't want the future generations to die. We don't want the innocent to suffer under Sauron and Saruman's, purge, so to speak. Sorry, I was trying to find the word there, but you know what I mean. This movie raises the emotional stakes of the story, but just you wait till part 3. Oh my god, Return of the King. But also, there is a lot of light relief in this film. I like the comedy, particularly between Legolas and Gimli. Legolas and Gimli, who are 10 times better in this movie, because they get so much more to do. And it's nice to see the evolution of elves and dwarves kind of almost forming a bit of a unity. Obviously, it's only Legolas and Gimli at this stage, but it's nice to see their friendship. There's a great moment when he says, "Shall I describe it to you, or would you like me to find you a box?" And Gimli laughs, which is funny. When they're standing atop the wall, and Gimli can't see what's ahead because he's a dwarf, he's too small. And yeah, there you go, you understand the joke. To me, the biggest accomplishment of the Two Towers is not the Battle of Helm's Deep, is not the fantastic visuals, is not the stellar performances. It is one particular performance. It is Andy Serkis as Gollum. Gollum is one of the best characters ever created in literature, and also for movies. The process that Serkis went under to create this character was fascinating. I mean, the fact is, they didn't know that this motion capture technology at the time, they didn't know the motion capture stuff was even going to work. So they were really taking a massive gamble with Gollum, because originally Andy Serkis was hired to be a voice actor, which he wasn't too keen on, but then they thought about doing motion capture and then using him on set for reference for the other actors, and then replacing him with the digital Gollum. And it's seamless. Gollum is phenomenal. The CGI looks so good, and the voice, Andy Serkis' voice, which he does, is amazing. And he came up with that voice because he saw his cat coughing up furballs, and that's where the Gollum, that's where that comes from. But the actual voice itself, that it's
all in the back of the throat process, and he always speaks a bit like this. He can't do a normal voice. He's always coughing.
And that's just a short demonstration of my impression, but the actual voice itself is a lot better. Honestly, Andy Serkis deserved an Oscar for this role. He really did. And it's one of the most incredible characters ever, because there are scenes in this movie where he talks to himself, because Gollum has had a really intense relationship with the ring. In that cave, he'd been there for like 500 years with the ring, and then obviously in The Hobbit, we saw Bilbo take the ring. Gollum is hell-bent to get his precious back, but he's a very manipulative character. He's not a very nice person, but we get to see his true colours in Return of the King. In this film, Sam is very suspicious of him from the get-go, but Frodo is a little bit more trusting of him, and that will be Frodo's undoing, ultimately. Frodo can see the good side of him, because there is a good side struggling to get out. Smeagol and Gollum, the scenes when he talks to himself are phenomenal. Like, there's the scene which I parodied for you at the start of this review, where he's talking about getting his precious back, and then the very last scene as well, when he talks to himself about sending the hobbits to their death to get the ring. And we also get to learn that Gollum was a hobbit as well, but we'll get to know a bit more about that in Return of the King. But he's just the most fascinating character. If anybody were to ask me who my favourite character was from Lord of the Rings, it would have to be Gollum. It just has to be Gollum. He's quite evil, but he's not all evil, and that's what I like. He's just been so psychologically damaged by this fucking ring. It's driven him mad. He's this skinny, scrangly creature. He basically crawls around on all fours, and he has that messed up voice, as I've already said. And but deep down there is a sweet little innocent creature in there, and Frodo tries to bring that out. So I love that, and I think he is the best thing about the Two Towers, easily. As for the other cast, though, they are all terrific. I mean, Elijah Wood, once again, is great as Frodo, and we're seeing Frodo kind of succumb to the ring a bit more. And yeah, it's weighing down on him, literally. Like I said in the previous review, this ring is a fucking piece of shit. This ring is a force of evil that is really, really hard to comprehend, and it's very hard to resist for certain people, which is why the Fellowship was never going to work, because one by one they all would have succumbed to the ring. So that's why Frodo knew he had to leave, although Sam has come with him to basically pick up the slack and to keep Frodo on track, if you will. We're seeing a bit more tensions with Frodo and Sam this time. There's a moment when Sam is insulting Gollum and Frodo snaps at him, and Sam he knows what's happening. He knows that the ring has taken a hold of Frodo, but It's only going to get worse in Return of the King. Also, Sean Astin as Sam, he's very good, and he gives a very nice speech at the end of the film about the stories and tales that really matter, and that they have to keep going and pursuing the end of their journey, because there's a moment when Frodo, he's about to break down, and he almost gives the ring away to the Nazgul, but Sam stops him, and he says, I can't do this anymore. And Sam says, oh, we've got to keep going and keep moving on. And that's essentially what the end speech of the movie is saying, which is beautiful. So that the emotional resonance of this story is fantastic. I also like the character of Eowyn. Yes, Eowyn. She's one of the main female characters in this series. And, I mean, I think she gets quite a huge role in Return of the King. But in this introduction, in this film, I like her very much. She's Theoden's niece, and she's a very pretty lady. And, you know, she's not just there to be a love interest. You know, she has a vital role to play in Return of the King. But in this one, we're just getting to know a bit more about her. Theoden mentions that he had to basically take her in after her mother died and everything. And, you know, he really does love her like his own daughter. And she takes a bit of a shine to Aragorn, shall we say. But we haven't seen the best of Eowyn yet, so I won't say too much more. But I think Miranda Otto is fabulous in this film. She's a great actress. And I look forward to talking about her role in Return of the King, because that's where she really comes into her own. Certain characters like Arwen, Galadriel, Elrond, they're not in this film that much. We get a bit more time with Arwen and Aragorn's relationship, because Arwen's such a brief character. They really had to beef her role up. Fun fact, they were actually going to include her in the Battle of Helm's Deep. However, they eventually decided against that because it just didn't really work with the narrative they were trying to do. The thing with Arwen and Aragorn is that basically they're so far apart, like physically, distance-wise, they're so far apart. So to tell this love story psychically is very difficult. There's this one sequence where Aragorn kind of has a dream, and she kind of appears to him as a vision or in a dream, and she says, oh, you gotta go with Frodo and you gotta carry on your mission. You can't come back for me. We do see a couple of flashbacks actually as well when he's being forced to basically let her go by her dad, but she doesn't believe him, and she knows that they love each other and they want to be together, but it's very hard. I mean, basically the elves are leaving Middle-earth because times are so dark now that they have no purpose anymore. And Elrond is trying to send his daughter away. You know, he's trying to keep her safe, and he's trying to send the elves are all going to the Grey Havens, the Undying Lands. So, I mean, there's a bit more drama going on in Return of the King, but here, yeah, it's kind of sad. You know, Arwen really is left with quite a tough choice. You know, she's being forced to basically give up the man she loves, and Aragorn can't really do anything. I mean, he's got the Even Star necklace, which is kind of connected to her life force, so he knows that she's there. But it's kind of hard for him to sort of let her go as well. It is really difficult. So there's a bit more development there, but we'll get to know more about that in Return of the King. I also like the introduction of Wormtongue. Yes, Grima Wormtongue, and he's a bloody slime ball. Brad Dourif plays him, and he puts on a pretty convincing English accent, actually. Wormtongue is a bit of a snake, to be honest. He's there in Rohan to basically keep an eye on Theoden, and he's feeding him all this BS from Saruman, you know, because Saruman has poisoned the king's mind, and you know, Grima is there to officiate his authority, so to speak. There is an excellent scene when Theoden transforms back to normal, and I mean, the effects on the transformation scene are just outstanding, but the actual scene is brilliant, the way it builds up when Gandalf tries to use his magic to turn Theoden back. But Wormtongue, he really is a nasty piece of work. He really is. But we actually do find out, if you've seen Return of the King, he's actually in the extended edition. We find out he's not all bad, and he's basically sort of victim to Saruman, basically. He's only doing what he's told. But he is a bit creepy. I mean, he kind of fancies Eowyn, and he's perving on her. And that proves to be a bit uncomfortable for her. A real stalker. But Brad Dourif plays him very well. He's a very interesting character. He's not in the story majorly, but he's got quite a few vital scenes in this particular film. In terms of the other cast members, Ian McKellen is great as Gandalf. He doesn't get huge amounts to do in this one, but it's nice to see him come back. And I love that opening scene when he fights the Balrog. That is an incredible opening. The effects are superb, and what a great way to kickstart this movie. It is fantastic. Some people have chosen to see this as the weakest of the trilogy because they feel it's a bit slow and there's not as much action. Well, actually, I concur. I don't think the pacing is as slow as some people make out. I think it flows very well because the film is constantly cutting between storylines. so it never feels boring. There might not be too much going on in the Treebeard storyline, but they only come back to it when they can. And I think the film is well balanced in terms of narrative and pace. I think it flows beautifully well. And the action, when it comes, is fabulous, is fantastic. So, if anything, I'd say the action is worth the wait. Also, Sir Christopher Lee as Saruman. Yes, once again, a fantastic performance. You can never go wrong with Christopher Lee. You really can't. Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn also, he gets a lot more to do in this one. There's a moment when he falls off a cliff and somehow he survives, but good for him. And he proves to take on quite a central role in the battle scene which at Helm's Deep, which is great. And I love that Legolas and Gimli, they're counting. They're counting all the enemies that they kill. I think it's brilliant. Also, I have to talk about Merry. Sorry, this might be a long review. So many things to talk about. Dominic Monaghan as Merry. This is his best performance of the trilogy by far. Purely because Merry comes of age. This is the film where Merry really matures and he grows up. And he realizes what's important. And Pippin is the one yet to grow up in Return of the King. And there's a scene when he says there won't be a Shire Pippin. If we don't do this, there isn't going to be anywhere to go back to. So he understands the importance of what's going on, and he actually values the others who are all fighting in whatever they're doing. So it's really, really quite intense, and they've raised the stakes quite dramatically. Also, worthy to mention Treebeard. I think Treebeard looks fantastic. The CGI is superb, and John Rhys-Davies, who actually plays Gimli, voices Treebeard, and I think the voice is great. I mean, it's a very big, booming voice, and he talks really slowly. The Ents have not heard about the troubles of elves and men for a very long time. And that's basically how he speaks. And it can be quite slow, but I can understand people finding the Treebeard scenes a bit dull, but I think they're okay. There's some funny scenes in the extended edition. Howard Shore's music is once again fabulous, and it really just complements the film so much. The Rohan theme is just brilliant. I hum it every time I watch the film. Also, the use of miniatures are fantastic in this one. You really do actually believe them, that they are there. Also, New Zealand. Great to have New Zealand. We get to see more of New Zealand, I think, this time. Especially when we get to Edoras, which is the capital of Rohan, and it's on this little hill. And, I mean, every single sort of shot looks beautiful, just because New Zealand is in there. Just brilliant. I also like that they gave the orcs a bit more dialogue in the earlier stages of the film. And the prosthetic makeup on the orcs is fantastic. Again, I will always defend the Hobbit movies, but I will never defend the fact that they use CGI for the orcs. I always wish the Hobbit actually did go back to the practical effects, but they probably didn't have time to do all that. The Hobbit was kind of a rushed production anyway. But in terms of this, it looks so good, and especially in the Battle of Helm's Deep, it feels gritty and it feels rough. I mean, it's actually raining, which enhances the kind of the mood of it. And again, it looks so real. You really believe this world, which I love. I also love the end title song, which is called Gollum Song. It's sung by Emiliana Torini, I think her name is, and the lyrics are really well done, and it's a very haunting kind of melody, and it's kind of a sad song, actually. It's really quite sad, but it's my favourite song to end the Middle-earth movie. It leaves you with a kind of intense feeling as well, of like, oh my god, what's going to happen in part 3? When the film ends, it sort of kick-starts, and when Gollum leads the hobbits off, and then we have the shot of the mountain, and then it just cuts to credits, and then it's a beautiful song. It really is a beautiful song. This movie is once again very long, but I don't mind that. I mean, these movies get away with being long. I mean, let's be fair. Whichever version you watch, the theatrical or the extended, they're both long. I choose to watch the extended cut because it's just more complete. But the theatrical cut is very good also. And the theatrical cut is actually 3 hours long. So there we go. This version, I think, is about 3.5 hours, or just under 4 hours. Yeah, it is very long, but it's worth it. Also, I think the script and everything is done really, really well. Oh, I forgot to mention Karl Urban as Éomer is also very good. Karl Urban as Éomer is also fantastic. Overall, I love and adore The Two Towers. It is... I think it's a teeny bit better than the first one. I really, really do. It complements it so well. It is a fabulous film. It really is. It's edited brilliantly. It comes together so well. The storytelling is superb. It's on a design level. It's also brilliant. It is a masterpiece, man. This movie is so good. And also, I forgot to mention that last scene at the end when Gandalf and Éomer and the Rohirrim charged down that hill. That still blows me away to this day. So, you know, I have to give this movie an easy 10 out of 10. Mwah! Fabulous. Excellent. But we're not done yet. We have one more film to review in this series and this trilogy. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Now, you'll expect a lot of love in that review. Believe me, there is a lot of love to come in that one. The Two Towers, what do you think of it? Have you seen it? Please comment down below. Let me know what you think of this review. I have reviewed the Hobbit films and the Fellowship of the Ring if you want to check those out. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And stay tuned when I review The Return of the King, which will be very soon. And again, I'm very sorry for the delay with this review. But, you know, things happened. But anyway, thank you very much all for watching. And as always, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. See you soon. Bye for now.